Emma was the epitome of an obedient wife. Raised in a traditional family in a small countryside town, she had been taught from an early age that the cornerstone of a happy marriage was submission and dedication. Her parents, strict yet loving, instilled in her the belief that a woman's ultimate duty was to her family and husband. Emma had dreams of her own, of course. She longed to study literature at a prestigious university, to write stories that would inspire people, but those dreams were deemed secondary. When she turned 22, her parents arranged her marriage to Henry Crawford, a well-to-do businessman from the city who was nearly 15 years her senior. Henry had met Emma briefly during a family gathering and had been taken by her demure beauty and polite manners. For Emma, the proposal came as a surprise, but she trusted her parents' judgment. Nervous yet hopeful, she believed her role as a wife would bring stability and purpose to her life. Their wedding was a grand affair, held in the sprawling garden of Henry's family estate. The Crawfords spared no expense, ensuring every detail spoke of their wealth and influence. Emma, in her elegant white gown adorned with delicate lace and pearls, looked serene, but she carried an unspoken weight. Her friends whispered words of admiration, calling her lucky to marry into such a prominent family. Emma nodded politely, masking the uncertainty swirling inside her. Henry, though charming and courteous, exuded an air of control. From their first conversation, he spoke with authority, outlining his expectations for their future. He assured Emma that she would be well cared for, provided she upheld her duties as a wife. Emma, raised to prioritize duty over desire, accepted his terms without protest. As they settled into their married life, Emma quickly adapted to her new role. Their home, a grand mansion overlooking the city, became her domain. Each day began early, with Emma rising before dawn to oversee the household staff. She prepared Henry's breakfast personally, ensuring it was served exactly as he liked. Poached eggs, toast lightly buttered, and freshly brewed coffee. She spent her mornings organizing the household accounts, arranging flowers in the drawing room, and ensuring the house remained immaculate. By afternoon, she would plan the evening meal, selecting recipes that would impress Henry and his occasional guests. Henry, though polite and appreciative, rarely offered more than a brief acknowledgement of her efforts. He was a man of routine, leaving for work promptly at 8 and returning at 6. Emma greeted him at the door each evening with a warm smile, taking his briefcase and offering a cup of tea. They dined together, discussing Henry's day, while Emma listened attentively, offering supportive comments. Despite her diligence, Emma often felt a void. Her days, though busy, lacked fulfillment. She missed the simple joys she once knew: reading poetry under the shade of a tree, writing stories in her old leather journal. Occasionally, she would steal moments to herself, retreating to the small study Henry rarely used. There, she would sit by the window, gazing at the horizon and wondering what lay beyond the confines of her life. One evening, as she prepared for bed, Emma's thoughts turned to the dreams she had set aside. She opened the drawer of her bedside table and retrieved an old notebook she had brought from her childhood home. Its pages were filled with stories and poems she had written as a teenager, tales of adventure and romance that once felt so alive. She traced her fingers over the faded ink, a lump forming in her throat. Somewhere deep within her, a small voice whispered that her life could be more than this, more than schedules, routines, and quiet obedience. Henry, meanwhile, remained unaware of Emma's inner turmoil. To him, she was the perfect wife, gracious, attentive, and devoted. He often invited influential friends and colleagues to their home, proudly presenting Emma as the ideal hostess. She played the part flawlessly, her poise and charm earning admiration from their guests. Yet, beneath her composed exterior, Emma felt increasingly disconnected from the world around her. Her parents visited occasionally, praising her for her grace and the life she had built with Henry. "You've done us proud, Emma," her mother would say, her eyes brimming with approval. Emma would smile and nod, suppressing the yearning that lingered in her heart. As weeks turned into months, Emma's sense of emptiness grew. She found herself questioning the path she had taken, wondering if her obedience was truly a virtue or merely a chain that bound her. Yet, she hesitated to voice her feelings, fearing she would disappoint those who had placed their trust in her. And so, Emma's days continued in quiet routine, her heart a storm of unspoken desires. Little did she know, the discovery of a hidden treasure in the most unlikely place would soon set her on a path she could never have imagined, challenging everything she thought she knew about herself and her role as a wife. It began with a seemingly trivial discovery. One morning, while organizing the attic as part of her spring cleaning routine, Emma stumbled upon an old trunk. It was tucked away in a corner, covered in a thick layer of dust, as though forgotten by time. Intrigued by its antique design, she knelt down and opened it, the rusty hinges creaking in protest. Inside, she found an assortment of items: faded photographs, letters written in elegant handwriting, and a worn leather journal. The journal caught her eye immediately. Its cover was embossed with intricate floral patterns, and though the leather was cracked with age, it exuded an air of mystery. Emma hesitated for a moment before picking it up. She flipped through its pages, discovering they were filled with writings from a woman named Margaret Crawford, Henry's late mother. Margaret's entries were captivating. They painted a vivid picture of a woman who was far more complex than the refined matriarch Emma had envisioned from the few stories Henry had shared. Margaret wrote about her struggles, her dreams, and her frustrations with the societal expectations placed upon her. One particular entry struck Emma deeply. "There is a world beyond these gilded walls, a world I have glimpsed only in my dreams. I long to break free, to be more than the obedient wife and dutiful mother. Yet, I fear the judgment of those around me. How does one balance duty and desire? How does one find the courage to seek happiness?" Emma's hands trembled as she read the words. They echoed her own unspoken thoughts, the feelings she had buried beneath years of conformity. Margaret's voice seemed to reach out to her across time, urging her to confront the questions she had avoided for so long. Over the next few days, Emma became consumed by the journal. She read it in secret, often retreating to the attic to immerse herself in Margaret's world. The entries revealed a woman who had yearned for freedom and self-expression, but had ultimately resigned herself to her role. Margaret's story both inspired and saddened Emma, sparking a fire within her that she could no longer ignore. Her perspective on her own life began to shift. Tasks that once seemed routine now felt oppressive. She started questioning the purpose of her endless efforts to maintain a perfect household. Was she truly living or merely existing to fulfill the expectations of others? Henry noticed a subtle change in Emma's demeanor. She still performed her duties with the same precision, but there was a distant look in her eyes, as though her thoughts were elsewhere. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, he remarked, "You've been unusually quiet lately. Is something troubling you?" Emma hesitated, unsure how to respond. She wanted to share her feelings, to tell him about Margaret's journal and the questions it had stirred within her, but she feared his reaction. Instead, she forced a smile and said, "No, Henry, I'm just a little tired. It's nothing to worry about." Henry accepted her answer without pressing further, but Emma knew she could not keep her thoughts bottled up forever. The journal had awakened something within her, a desire to explore her own identity, to rediscover the dreams she had set aside. For the first time, she began to consider the possibility of change, even as she grappled with the uncertainty it would bring. Emma's discovery of Margaret Crawford's journal lingered in her thoughts, and she began to see the world around her through new eyes. The grand mansion, once a symbol of her stability, now felt like a gilded cage. Emma's interactions with Henry became more measured, her responses more introspective. Though she continued her duties as a wife, she couldn't shake the questions Margaret's words had sparked. What did she truly want? What had she sacrificed to maintain this life? One morning, Emma found herself standing before the mirror in her bedroom, studying her reflection. She saw a woman dressed impeccably, every hair in place, her posture perfect. But her eyes, the windows to her soul, seemed dim, like a flame struggling to stay alight. Determined to reclaim a sense of herself, Emma decided to begin small. She would carve out moments for her own happiness. Her first step was to revisit her childhood passion for writing. Late at night, after Henry had retired to bed, Emma would retreat to the small study with her old leather notebook. She filled its pages with stories and poems, rediscovering the joy of creativity. Writing became her sanctuary, a space where she could be free from the constraints of her daily life. Meanwhile, Emma grew bolder in her interactions with Henry. She began to voice her opinions, subtly at first, but with growing confidence. During one of their dinners, Henry mentioned plans to host a gathering for his business associates. Emma, usually content to nod along, surprised him by suggesting a theme for the event. "Why not make it a garden party?" she said, her tone firm yet warm. "The weather's perfect, and it could be a chance to showcase the new rose bushes in the backyard." Henry raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "That's an excellent idea, Emma. I'll leave the arrangements to you." Encouraged by his response, Emma threw herself into planning the event. She coordinated every detail, from the floral arrangements to the menu. The garden party was a resounding success, earning praise from Henry's colleagues. For the first time in years, Emma felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond fulfilling her duties as a wife. But Emma's journey of self-discovery was not without challenges. Henry, though appreciative of her efforts, began to notice her growing independence. One evening, he found her writing in the study. "What are you working on?" he asked, his tone curious but tinged with suspicion. Emma hesitated, then closed the notebook gently. "Just a few stories," she said. "It helps me relax." Henry frowned. "You've been spending a lot of time in here lately. I hope you're not neglecting your responsibilities." Emma met his gaze, her voice steady. "I'm not Henry. Everything is in order, but I also need some time for myself." Her words hung in the air, an unspoken challenge. Henry's frown deepened, but he said nothing, leaving the room without another word. Emma's heart raced, but she refused to feel guilty. For the first time, she had asserted her need for personal space, and it felt both terrifying and liberating. In the weeks that followed, Emma continued to navigate the delicate balance between her duties and her newfound sense of self. She began to take long walks in the nearby park, finding solace in nature. She also reached out to an old friend, Clara, who had moved to the city years ago. Over tea, they reminisced about their childhood and shared their hopes and fears. Clara, a painter, encouraged Emma to embrace her creativity. "You've always had a way with words," she said. "Don't let that go." Emma's connection with Clara became a lifeline, a reminder that she was not alone in her struggles. Together, they attended art exhibits and literary readings, experiences that reignited Emma's passion for the arts. Through these outings, Emma began to build a small circle of like-minded individuals who shared her love for creativity and self-expression. As Emma's world expanded, so did her confidence. She began to see herself not just as an obedient wife, but as a woman with her own identity and dreams. The journey was far from over, but she felt a newfound sense of purpose. Margaret's journal remained a constant source of inspiration, its pages a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. One evening, as Emma sat by the window with the journal in her lap, she whispered a quiet promise to herself. "I will honor your dreams, Margaret, and I will find my own." The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, Emma felt ready to embrace it, one step at a time. Emma's transformation did not go unnoticed. While Henry appreciated the success of the garden party and the praise it brought, he remained wary of the subtle changes in his wife's demeanor. For a man accustomed to control, Emma's newfound confidence and autonomy posed a challenge. He began to observe her more closely, his sharp eyes noticing the shifts in her routine. The stolen hours in the study, the quiet walks in the park, the occasional gatherings with Clara and her creative circle. One afternoon, Henry decided to address the changes directly. "Emma," he began, his tone firm but measured, "I've noticed you've been spending a lot of time on personal pursuits. While I support your hobbies, I trust they won't interfere with your responsibilities here." Emma paused, setting down the book she had been reading. She looked at Henry, her heart racing, but her voice remained calm. "My responsibilities are well in hand, Henry. Everything in this house runs as it should. But I've realized it's also important to have a sense of self, something beyond my role as a wife." Her words hung in the air, a quiet defiance that unsettled Henry. He frowned, his brow furrowing. "A sense of self? Emma, your role here is vital. The life we've built depends on both of us fulfilling our parts. Distractions can lead to complications." Emma met his gaze steadily. "I understand that, Henry, but I believe a balance can be struck. I am not neglecting my duties, but I also need to nurture my own identity. Surely, that's not unreasonable." Henry's jaw tightened, but he said nothing more. The conversation left Emma shaken but determined. For the first time, she had voiced her desires directly to Henry, asserting her right to explore her own identity. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. That evening, as Emma prepared for bed, her thoughts drifted to the journal of Margaret Crawford. She opened it to a passage she had read countless times, one that had become her mantra. To seek one's own happiness is not selfishness but necessity. A life unexamined is a life unlived. The words resonated deeply, giving her the courage to continue her journey of self-discovery. In the weeks that followed, Emma grew bolder. She began attending writing workshops hosted by Clara's friends, immersing herself in an environment that celebrated creativity and expression. The workshops were a revelation, introducing her to people from all walks of life who shared her passion for storytelling. Their encouragement and constructive feedback fueled her confidence, and soon, Emma found herself writing with a fervor she hadn't experienced in years. Her stories, inspired by her own experiences and the musings of Margaret Crawford, began to take shape. One tale, in particular, consumed her. A story of a woman trapped by societal expectations who finds the courage to break free and embrace her true self. The narrative was raw and deeply personal, a reflection of Emma's own struggles and triumphs. Henry, meanwhile, grew increasingly uneasy. He often found Emma lost in thought, her attention seemingly elsewhere. Though she continued to fulfill her duties with precision, the emotional distance between them became palpable. Henry attempted to bridge the gap by planning lavish outings and surprising Emma with expensive gifts, but these gestures felt hollow to her. What she craved was not material wealth, but emotional connection, a depth that Henry seemed unable or unwilling to provide. One evening, during a dinner party hosted by one of Henry's business associates, Emma found herself seated next to an older woman named Eleanor, a widow known for her sharp wit and keen observations. Eleanor, sensing Emma's restlessness, leaned in and said, "You have the look of someone carrying a heavy burden, my dear. Tell me, what weighs on your heart?" Emma hesitated, then replied, "I suppose I've been questioning my place in the world. I feel as though I've been living for others, not for myself." Eleanor smiled knowingly. "Ah, the age-old dilemma. My late husband was much like your Henry, brilliant but rigid, focused on appearances and control. It took me years to realize that my happiness was my own responsibility. You must carve out your own path, Emma, even if it means facing resistance." Eleanor's words struck a chord with Emma, reaffirming her resolve. That night, as she lay in bed, she made a decision. She would submit one of her stories to a literary magazine. The thought terrified her, but it also exhilarated her. It was a step toward reclaiming the dreams she had once abandoned. Over the next few days, Emma worked tirelessly to refine her story. She poured her heart into every word, crafting a narrative that was both deeply personal and universally relatable. When she finally submitted it, she felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation, unsure of what the outcome would be, but proud of her courage. As she waited for a response, Emma continued to navigate her evolving relationship with Henry. Though she maintained her duties as a wife, she no longer felt bound by them. She began setting boundaries, gently but firmly asserting her need for personal time and space. Henry, though resistant at first, seemed to grudgingly accept the changes, though his demeanor grew more guarded. One afternoon, as Emma was tending to the garden, a letter arrived. The envelope bore the logo of the literary magazine she had submitted her story to. Her hands trembled as she opened it, her heart pounding. The letter began with the words she had dared to hope for. "We are pleased to inform you that your story has been accepted for publication." Tears streamed down Emma's face as she read the rest of the letter. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not as a wife, but as an individual with her own voice and talents. The acceptance was more than just validation of her writing. It was a testament to her courage and resilience. That evening, Emma shared the news with Clara, who embraced her with joy. "This is just the beginning, Emma," Clara said. "You have so much to offer the world." Emma nodded, her heart full. She knew the road ahead would not be easy, but she was ready to face whatever challenges came her way. With Margaret's journal as her guide and her own determination as her compass, Emma was finally beginning to forge a life that was truly her own. Emma's journey into self-discovery had reached a milestone with the publication of her story, but it was only the beginning of a profound transformation. The acceptance of her work gave her the courage to dream bigger and to challenge the boundaries that had long confined her. Yet, she understood that growth came with its own set of challenges, both internal and external. Henry's reaction to the news of her published story was lukewarm at best. When Emma shared her achievement with him over dinner, his response was polite but distant. "That's wonderful, Emma. It's good to have a hobby that brings you joy," he said, his focus shifting back to his plate. Emma felt a pang of disappointment, but chose to let it pass. She reminded herself that this journey was hers, not Henry's, and that she couldn't measure her success through his eyes. Clara's words echoed in her mind. "Your happiness is your own responsibility." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Emma began receiving invitations to join literary panels and speak at events. While she was initially hesitant, Clara encouraged her to embrace these opportunities. "You have a voice, Emma. Use it," Clara urged. Her first public speaking engagement was at a small community center. Emma stood nervously behind the podium, clutching her notes. The room was filled with aspiring writers, their eager faces turned toward her. Taking a deep breath, she began to speak. "I never thought I'd be here, standing in front of you all," she started, her voice trembling slightly. "For years, I believed my only role in life was to support others, to be the perfect wife. But I've learned that we are more than the roles we play. We are individuals with dreams, talents, and voices that deserve to be heard." Her words resonated deeply with the audience. By the end of her talk, Emma felt a surge of pride and belonging she hadn't experienced in years. The applause that followed was not just for her words, but for the courage it took to share them. Meanwhile, at home, Henry was struggling to come to terms with the changes in Emma. He watched as she flourished in her new role as a writer, her confidence growing with each passing day. While he admired her achievements, he couldn't ignore the shift in their dynamic. The obedient wife he had known was now a partner with her own ambitions and desires. One evening, as they sat in the study, Henry broached the topic. "Emma, I've noticed how busy you've been lately. These events, the writing, it's all very impressive. But I can't help but feel like we're drifting apart." Emma looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "I felt it too, Henry. But I believe it's because we've always defined our relationship through expectations rather than understanding. I've changed, yes, but that doesn't mean I care for you any less. It just means I'm learning to care for myself too." Her honesty caught Henry off guard. He sat silently for a moment, processing her words. "I suppose I've taken for granted how much you've sacrificed over the years. Perhaps it's time I start supporting you the way you've always supported me." It was a tentative step forward, but it marked a turning point in their relationship. For the first time, Henry began to see Emma not just as his wife, but as an individual with her own identity and aspirations. As Emma's career gained momentum, she began to explore topics that were deeply personal and often controversial. Her stories delved into themes of societal expectations, gender roles, and the struggle for self-identity. These narratives resonated with readers, earning her both praise and criticism. One of her stories, titled "The Cage Within," sparked a heated debate among literary circles. The tale of a woman breaking free from the constraints of a traditional marriage struck a nerve, with some lauding it as a powerful commentary on empowerment and others condemning it as an attack on family values. The controversy reached Henry's social circle, where whispers and raised eyebrows became commonplace. At a dinner party, one of his colleagues remarked, "Your wife's writing certainly stirs the pot, Henry. Must be quite an adjustment for you." Henry forced a smile, choosing his words carefully. "Emma has a unique perspective, and I respect her courage to share it. Not everyone may agree, but that's the beauty of art. It sparks conversation." Despite his outward composure, Henry found himself grappling with the implications of Emma's success. The woman he had once believed to be predictable and pliant was now a force to be reckoned with, her voice echoing far beyond their home. Emma, too, faced her own challenges. The criticism she received was often harsh and deeply personal, attacking not just her work but her character. There were days when the weight of it all felt overwhelming, but she found solace in the support of her growing community of writers and readers. Clara, ever her champion, reminded her, "If your words didn't matter, they wouldn't provoke such strong reactions. Keep writing, Emma." It was during this time that Emma discovered another layer of her identity, a mentor. Young women and aspiring writers began seeking her guidance, sharing their own struggles and dreams. Emma embraced this role wholeheartedly, finding joy in helping others navigate the path she had once feared to tread. One of her ments, a bright but shy girl named Lucy, confided, "Your stories gave me the courage to pursue my passion for writing. I used to think my voice didn't matter, but now I believe it does." Emma felt a deep sense of fulfillment in these moments, realizing that her journey was not just about her own liberation, but also about inspiring others to find their voices. As the year drew to a close, Emma reflected on how far she had come. The obedient wife who had once lived in the shadows was now a celebrated writer, mentor, and advocate for change. Her relationship with Henry, though still a work in progress, had grown stronger through their shared efforts to understand and support each other. One evening, as they sat together by the fireplace, Henry turned to Emma and said, "I may not always understand your world, but I'm proud of the woman you've become. You've taught me that strength isn't just about control, it's about growth and resilience." Emma smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. "And you've taught me that love isn't about losing oneself, but about finding the courage to be true to who you are." Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, they faced the future not as husband and obedient wife, but as partners, equals, and individuals charting their own paths. The winds of change had transformed their lives, carrying them toward a horizon filled with possibility and hope. As Emma's journey into self-discovery deepened, life at home became a complex dance between tradition and transformation. She continued to flourish in her writing career, receiving accolades, invitations, and heartfelt letters from readers who found pieces of themselves in her stories. Each step she took toward independence seemed to ripple through the carefully structured world she and Henry had built, challenging them both in ways they hadn't anticipated. One chilly autumn evening, Emma prepared for another speaking engagement, this time at a prestigious literary festival. She selected a modest yet elegant dress and spent extra time practicing her speech. This event was different. She was a keynote speaker, and the audience would include critics, fans, and industry leaders. As she stood before the mirror, she caught Henry's reflection watching her from the doorway. "You look beautiful," he said, stepping into the room. "This is a big deal, isn't it?" Emma turned to him, a mixture of excitement and nervousness in her eyes. "It is, but it's also intimidating. What if I'm not good enough?" Henry took her hands, his grip firm yet gentle. "Emma, you've faced far greater fears than this. You've shown incredible courage in putting your thoughts out there for the world to see. Tonight, just be yourself. That's more than enough." His words buoyed her spirits, a reminder that despite the challenges they faced as a couple, there were moments of genuine connection that bridged the gaps between them. The event was a resounding success. Emma captivated the audience with her speech, weaving personal anecdotes with broader reflections on societal expectations and the pursuit of individuality. She shared stories of women who had inspired her, including her own struggles to break free from the confines of her previous life. During the Q&A, a session, a young woman stood up and asked, "What advice would you give to someone who feels trapped in a life they didn't choose?" Emma paused, her gaze thoughtful. "I would say start small. Find one thing that brings you joy or makes you feel alive, and nurture it. It might be reading, writing, painting, or even taking a walk alone. Those small moments of freedom can grow into something larger, a foundation for the life you want to build." The applause that followed was thunderous, but the real victory came afterward, when attendees approached her with words of gratitude and admiration. Among them was a woman in her 60s who whispered, "You've given me the courage to start over." At home, however, the growing divide between Emma and Henry became increasingly evident. While he attended her events and offered words of encouragement, there was an undercurrent of unease that neither could ignore. Henry struggled to reconcile the woman Emma had become with the wife he had known for so many years. One evening, as they shared a quiet dinner, Henry finally voiced his thoughts. "Emma, I admire everything you've accomplished, but I can't help feeling like I'm losing you." Emma set down her fork, her expression softening. "You're not losing me, Henry. I'm still here, but I'm changing. And change doesn't have to mean the end of us. It can mean a new beginning if we let it." Henry nodded slowly, his gaze distant. "I want to support you, but I don't know how. It's like I'm standing still while you're moving forward." Emma reached across the table, her hand covering his. "Then let's move forward together. Let's find ways to grow, not apart but side by side. It won't be easy, but I believe it's worth trying." Emma's writing began to delve even deeper into themes of personal liberation and societal norms. One of her latest stories, The Thread Unraveled, explored the complexities of a woman rediscovering herself after decades of living in the shadow of her husband's ambitions. The story resonated with readers, but also drew sharp criticism from conservative circles. The backlash reached a peak when a prominent columnist accused Emma of promoting selfish individualism over family values. The criticism stung, but Emma refused to be silenced. In a heartfelt blog post, she wrote, "Self-discovery is not selfish. It is an act of courage to look within, confront your fears, and embrace your true self. By becoming whole individuals, we can bring more authenticity, love, and understanding into our relationships and communities." Her words ignited a movement. Women from all walks of life began sharing their own stories of self-discovery, using the hashtag the whole self. Emma found herself at the center of a growing conversation, a beacon of hope for those seeking to break free from societal constraints. At home, the strain between Emma and Henry reached a boiling point one evening when they argued over a particularly scathing article about her. "Why do you have to be so public about everything?" Henry demanded. "Can't you just keep some things private?" Emma's voice trembled with emotion as she replied, "Because silence is what kept me invisible for so long. I won't go back to that, Henry. I can't." The argument left both of them emotionally drained, but it also forced them to confront the underlying issues in their marriage. They began attending couples counseling, a decision that marked a turning point in their relationship. Through therapy, they learned to communicate more openly and to appreciate each other's perspectives. As Emma continued to grow in her career and personal life, she found herself drawn to new experiences and challenges. She joined a mentorship program for aspiring writers and began working on a memoir that chronicled her journey from obedience to self-empowerment. The process was both cathartic and illuminating, allowing her to reflect on how far she had come and how much further she wanted to go. Henry, too, began to change. He took up photography, a hobby he had long abandoned, and started volunteering at a local community center. These pursuits gave him a sense of purpose and allowed him to reconnect with parts of himself he had neglected over the years. By the end of the year, Emma and Henry's relationship had evolved into something more balanced and authentic. They celebrated their anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, reminiscing about their journey together. "Do you ever regret the changes we've made?" Henry asked, his tone contemplative. Emma smiled, her eyes shining with gratitude. Not for a moment. Change is never easy, but it's what keeps us alive. And I think we're better for it, both as individuals and as a couple. As they clinked their glasses, Emma felt a deep sense of fulfillment. She had embraced the storm of change, and in doing so, had discovered not only her own strength, but also the resilience of their love. Together, they faced the future with renewed hope, ready to write the next chapter of their lives. Years had passed since Emma's transformation began, and the woman she had become was nothing short of extraordinary. Her once quiet life, dominated by obedience and self-doubt, had evolved into a vibrant tapestry of purpose, ambition, and love. It was through the journey of rediscovery that she realized her true potential, and she knew now that her life was no longer solely defined by the choices of her past, but by the woman she had chosen to become. The story of Emma's metamorphosis was something she couldn't ignore, a story that had been burning in her heart for so long. The woman who once relied on her husband Henry to be her guide had found her own path. With each step of courage, she had learned to let go of the weight of societal expectations and the limitations that had confined her. But she had not done so in isolation. Throughout this journey, Henry had been her steadfast companion, learning and growing alongside her. Henry had been there for every milestone, supporting her, encouraging her, and most importantly, accepting her newfound strength. Their marriage, once marked by uneven power dynamics, had shifted into something much more equal and beautiful. Together, they had rebuilt their partnership into something they could both cherish, a love rooted in mutual respect, admiration, and shared dreams. It was during one quiet evening, as Emma sat hunched over her laptop, typing away at her first novel, that she realized how far she had come. The words flowed easily now, no longer confined by fear of judgment or the nagging voice of inadequacy that had once paralyzed her. Her novel told the story of a woman's journey towards self-discovery, of overcoming the constraints imposed by others, and of finding the courage to step into her own light. It was her story, reflected in the life of her fictional heroine, and Emma poured every ounce of her heart into the pages. When the novel was completed, Emma sent it to several publishing houses, hopeful but anxious. It had been years since she had dared to dream so big, and now it was finally happening. After what felt like an eternity, she received an offer from a prestigious publisher who saw in her words a spark of something rare. Her book, A Journey Rewritten, was to be published, and just like that, Emma's life took another monumental turn. The day of the book launch was everything Emma had imagined, full of nervous excitement, overwhelming pride, and a deep sense of accomplishment. The venue was buzzing with anticipation, the air filled with the smell of fresh flowers and champagne. She could hardly believe the transformation that had brought her here. But as she stood in front of the crowd, ready to give her speech, it wasn't the applause or the flashes of cameras that caught her attention. It was Henry, standing at the back of the room, his eyes locked with hers. In that moment, it was as though the entire room faded into the background, and all that remained was the profound connection they shared. Henry's presence at that moment wasn't just as her husband, but as her equal. He had been with her through every painful revelation, every breakthrough, and every victory. She had found herself, and in doing so, had found a deeper, more intimate connection with him. And now, here they were, about to embark on a new chapter in their lives, one built on love, respect, and endless possibilities. Taking the microphone, Emma paused for a moment, her heart racing. The words she had prepared felt inadequate in comparison to what she wanted to say. But when she looked out into the crowd, all she could think about was Henry and the way he had stood by her side through it all. I stand before you today, not just as an author, but as a woman who has been blessed with the opportunity to rewrite my own story. My journey to self-discovery has not been easy, but it has been worth every step. And I would not be standing here without the support of the person who has been my rock through it all, my husband, Henry. He has taught me the true meaning of love and partnership, and I am forever grateful for the unwavering belief he had in me when I couldn't even believe in myself. Henry smiled, his eyes glistening with pride. The crowd erupted into applause, but Emma's gaze never left his. He had been her first love, her partner in every sense of the word, and now they had built a new foundation, one that was stronger, richer, and more beautiful than ever before. In the years that followed, Emma's success as a writer continued to grow. A Journey Rewritten became a bestseller, inspiring women around the world to embark on their own paths towards self-discovery and empowerment. Emma began speaking at conferences, offering workshops on personal growth and self-acceptance. Her voice, once quiet and unsure, was now one of strength and confidence. She had become a beacon for others, a testament to the power of perseverance and the belief that it's never too late to rewrite your story. Through it all, Henry remained her greatest supporter. As Emma's career flourished, he continued to champion her success, never seeking the spotlight for himself, but always taking pride in her achievements. They traveled the world together, sharing moments of quiet reflection, laughter, and love. Their relationship, once tested by the pressures of conformity, was now a living example of what it meant to grow together, to evolve, and to love unconditionally. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their seaside home, watching the sun set over the horizon, Henry took Emma's hand in his voice filled with emotion. "We've come so far, haven't we?" Emma smiled, her heart full. "Yes, we have, and we're just getting started." Together, they had not only rewritten their individual stories, but they had also written a shared one, a story of love, resilience, and the power of partnership. It was a story without limits, one that defied expectations and embraced the beauty of second chances. In the quiet moments of their lives, Emma knew that she had everything she had ever dreamed of: love, fulfillment, and the freedom to live her truth. As the years passed, Emma continued to write, but her most meaningful work was the life she built with Henry. They had grown together in ways neither of them could have anticipated, yet their love had only deepened. The story that had begun with a woman's quiet submission had evolved into one of shared joy, respect, and unbreakable bond. And so, they lived, not as two separate people, but as one, forever rewriting their story together, each chapter more beautiful than the last. It was a love that had no end, for they knew that as long as they had each other, their story would never stop being written. Hope you enjoyed this story. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to our channel. Your participation is essential so that we can continue to bring you more incredible stories. Share it with your friends to help our channel grow. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.